The Chamberlain Case Forensic Evaluation.
The Chamberlain story began on the 17th of August 1980 when a family's holiday became their worst nightmare after their 9-week-old daughter Azaria was taken and killed by a dingo. The story, however, became highly suspicious and ultimately led to a trial in which the Chamberlains were accused of the murder of their baby. With the case against the Chamberlains heavily reliant on the forensic evidence, the experts undoubtedly had a significant impact on the Chamberlains' convictions. It was this same evidence, however, that came to exonerate Lindy and Michael when the Royal Commission revealed considerable flaws in relation to the scientific approach and the experts' credentials. The remainder of this presentation explores these issues in relation to Azaria's clothing and the bloodstains found in the Chamberlain's car, and how they came to bring about a change in the world of forensic science.
A week after Azaria's disappearance, her jumpsuit along with her singlet and nappy were discovered by Victorian tourist Wally Goodwin. Tattered and drenched in blood, the forensic investigations focused on the analysis of the origins of the bloodstaining pattern and determining the cause of the damage. More specifically, the main considerations around the bloodstains revolved around determining the location of Azaria's wounds and subsequently her cause of death. Although most experts agreed that Azaria most likely suffered a fatal injury to her neck or head, but that her exact wounds could not be determined, forensic pathologist James Cameron was adamant that the staining pattern was indicative of a cut throat. Not only did Cameron's findings counter that of all other experts, but such a claim was also extraordinarily improper for him to make for a number of reasons. Firstly, Cameron had no experience determining the cause of death based solely on the deceased's clothing. Secondly, his conclusions had no experimental basis, with Cameron claiming his experience in canine attacks sufficient. And finally, Cameron's opinions were admittedly based on assumptions that were later proven wrong. These included Cameron's belief that the jumpsuit was found in a neat pile with only 2 studs undone, and that no dingo hairs or saliva were present on the clothing. Overall, Cameron's involvement was a clear example of an expert working both under speculation and outside of expertise, and consequently deems his findings highly objectionable.
When considering the jumpsuit damage, the main focus for the forensic experts was on determining whether it was a result of cuts or tears. The key points emphasized by the Crown for this evidence were based on the presence of tufts and the planar array of the cuts. With both the prosecution and the defense producing a number of experts in support of their case, the main issue around this evidence was on the Crown's reliance on the testimonies given by textile expert Professor Chaikin and Sergeant Frank Cox. Chaikin clearly failed as an expert witness when he showed bias in his blatant disregard for other possibilities, despite the conflicting evidence. This was particularly evident when Chaikin merely redirected his focus to the planar array of the cuts, after the defense eradicated his claim that the presence of tufts was strongest against a dingo attack. Questions were also raised to Chaikin's work during the Royal Commission, when it was found out that the microscopic examinations that Chaikin had depended on were insufficiently performed with an electron microscope. Sergeant Cox, on the other hand, was only a police technician and therefore was not qualified to give the opinions that he did. In his report, Justice Morling even came to disregard Cox's evidence, describing it as too speculative. Therefore, this evidence showed similar issues to Cameron's, with Cox clearly acting outside his expertise and Chaikin failing to meet his expectations as an expert. Other issues surrounding the forensic examination of the clothing revolved around the identification of possible dingo hairs and the discovery of a bloodied handprint on Azaria's jumpsuit. Restricted by the limitations in the technology of his time, Dr. Harding was unable to conclusively identify the source of the hairs, suggesting that it could have come from the Chamberlain's cat. This uncertainty was perceived as a challenge in the defence's case that led to a greater disbelief in the dingo theory. It was only during the Royal Commission that Mr. Brunner, using new techniques in the field, was able to conclusively identify the hairs as that of a dog and amend the perception of this evidence. It was then again during Cameron's examinations that a bloodied handprint was identified under UV light along with other various finger marks on Azaria's jumpsuit. Once again, Cameron was not only alone in his findings but acting under yet another assumption. This time, Cameron was working under the belief that the handprint was made out in blood, when in fact, as Dr. Tony Raymond of the Royal Commission would later prove, the substance was actually red sand. These pieces of evidence once again highlight major issues in the capability of the scientists to produce accurate and reliable results with yet another emphasis on the issue of speculation. What was probably the most incriminating piece of forensic evidence within the case was the discovery of fetal blood in the Chamberlain's car on the 8th of October 1981. During a forensic examination of the vehicle, around 22 samples were identified, including patterns found on a metal plate under the dashboard, a pattern found on the passenger's glove box, and a pattern found on the side of the passenger's seat. Despite being such a crucial aspect of the prosecution's case, at no point from its recovery to its presentation in court was this evidence properly handled, with scientists showing a complete disregard for scientific protocol. This was particularly evident in the work of the Crown's key witness, forensic biologist Joy Kuhl, who showed substantial faults throughout her investigations. These included the continued analysis of samples that failed presumptive tests, the lack of consideration to the detrimental effects of heat and time on blood samples and the potential of these to produce non-specific results, the use of presumptive Ouch-Tolini tests for confirmatory means, the use of anti-sera that was non-specific for fetal hemoglobin, dubious and missing results, and the destruction of test slides without photography such that they could not be cross-checked by other experts. Similar issues were also seen in the testimonies of Dr. Brian Culliford, who had no recollection of the test that he had performed and no documentation to confirm with. Overall, the expert analyses surrounding these bloodstains appears to have failed in almost every aspect that would otherwise deem this evidence inadmissible in today's courts. Having said that, there were a variety of experts, particularly those appearing on behalf of the defense, whose practices clearly exceeded that of those just discussed. But unfortunately for the defense, due to a lack of understanding, their evidence was insufficient in the eyes of the jury. These experts included forensic pathologist Vernon Plukan, forensic biologist Patrick Lincoln, Professor Barry Boettcher, and dingo expert Les Harris, among others. In the end, it was through the investigations of Justice T.R. Morling during the Royal Commission, with the assistance of Dr. Raymond and Dr. Hoschk, that the extent of the flaws in the forensic evidence were exposed, and the Crown's most influential evidence negated to bring justice.
Ultimately, it was the devastating mistakes in the forensic analysis that led to the wrongful convictions of Lindy and Michael Chamberlain that sparked a 32-year battle for an innocent family to finally clear their name. With this, the Chamberlain family was driven to go out and actively campaign in order to raise awareness of not only issues surrounding dingoes, but also in the legal and scientific system so as to prevent another miscarriage of justice.
Having highlighted so many fundamental issues in the area of forensic science, this case came to be the catalyst for a variety of imperative changes surrounding the operation of forensic laboratories. This included the establishment of a number of organisations, including the Senior Managers of Australia and New Zealand Forensic Laboratories, Australian and New Zealand Forensic Science Society, and the National Institute of Forensic Science. These bodies were created to establish rules that govern quality management, standards of practice, and accreditation, as well as provide a source of communication and education to enhance and encourage the ongoing development of these sciences.